at the store, or on the road. Anywhere you need to go, we'll be with you. Orion News Talk, news and views beyond the mainstream media. In a world of big money power, accidents don't just happen, and coincidence is only an excuse for the guilty. Welcome to the Conspiracy Chronicles.
The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We must not fail to comprehend its grave implications.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations.
There has been an attempt, as perhaps you know now, on the life of President Kennedy. He was wounded in an automobile driving from Dallas Airport into downtown Dallas. The flash, apparently official, President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time.
Good evening. Dr. Martin Luther King, the apostle of nonviolence in the civil rights movement, has been shot to death in Memphis, Tennessee.
Senator Robert Francis Kennedy died at 1:44 a.m. today, June 6, 1968.
An incident that took place less than 15 minutes ago at the Washington Hilton Hotel when shots were fired at President Reagan.
A second bomb has been found inside that federal building in Oklahoma City.
The whole side has collapsed?
The whole building has collapsed.
The whole building has collapsed?
The building has collapsed.
That's the southern tower you're talking about.
Exactly, the second building.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories concerning the attacks of September the 11th. Malicious lies that attempt to shift the blame away from the terrorists themselves, away from the guilty.
And now, here are your conspiracy detectives, Joe Joseph and Tim Watts.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Sunday edition of the Freedom Link, our Conspiracy Chronicles. And boy, do we have a conspiracy for you tonight. Holy moly, man. Before we start the broadcast, though, my cohort in crime, my trusty co-pilot, has been eerily silent lately, and I wanted to give everybody an update as to what's going on. But Tim Watts, my normal co-host on the Freedom Link, is really, really sick, been sick for a while now. So everybody, please send out the good vibes for all those that have a spiritual type of understanding. Send your prayers, do whatever you can. But, I mean, he's really sick, so just send the good vibes his way if you guys would. And tonight the subject is going to be Ron Paul. I think you can't talk about this enough because there's a lot of facets to this, and I'm not going to be biased and draw a conclusion either way. I don't know because the man hasn't spoken yet, but we will talk about it tonight. And to join me doing that, I've got Ken Hildebrand from the Information Nation, and I've got Popeye from Federal Jack and Down the Rabbit Hole here on the Orion Talk Radio Network. Hello, fellers.
Hello, Joe.
Boy, you sound like you're not exactly in tip-top shape either there, Kenny.
No, I've been sicker than a dog all day today. I think that damn CIA has been spraying stuff in my Cheerios.
Oh, man, I hate when they do that.
You know how it is.
Sure.
I was fine until I started to associate with you and Popeye, and then everything went back in a handbasket.
You know how many times I've heard that?
Yeah, me too, man. It happens. And you know what? You just deal with it. Deal with it. That's the way we roll, so it comes with the territory.
All I can tell the government is,
bring it.
And so the soundboard kicks off already, 7:10 p.m. Eastern. Well, boys, Ron Paul, of course, has been eerily silent the last couple of days, and Of course, the big news is Rand Paul endorsing Romney for president, which to me is the equivalent of kicking me in the gonads. I mean, you talk about betrayal. But, I mean, in all honesty, folks and guys, I knew this guy to be a neocon well before he was even elected to the Senate. Much the same of like Marco Rubio. Same thing, wolf in sheep's clothing. And just because he's the son of Ron Paul doesn't mean that he shares the same ideals or he's even the same person. So it's not really a surprise to me that this has happened. But let's put something in perspective real quick. Ron Paul is 76 years old. And, according to Rand, and he says it in such a nice Roman Catholic priest voice whenever he talks, But he talks and says, I was campaigning for my father since I was 11 years old. Well, that's great. So if you've got that much of a rapport with your dad and everything else, then how do you think your dad feels? Just out of curiosity. You're 76, probably not all that into it anymore. You probably didn't want to have to go through and run for president again, but, you're forced into it because it's for the good of the country and everything else, yada, yada, yada. And next thing you know, your son goes and endorses Mitt Romney, and I don't know if Ron knows about it or not, but I'll tell you this, I know the wind would be out of my sails, and at 76, I'd be like, that's it. No mo. So if he's taking a couple of days to mourn, whatever. I'm not, like I said, until I hear from the man himself, I can't draw any conclusions. What's your guys' thoughts on that?
I don't know. I think Ron Paul, he'll stir enough crap at the Republican National Convention. He was a dark horse from the beginning because the Ministry of Truth was not going to let him get an edge anywhere. I mean, it took him 3 months to figure out that he won Iowa, for crying out loud. And they just ignored him. Basically, they ignored him. He was a non-entity.
Right.
And it's the same old shill game they've been playing for, I don't know, it's as long as I can remember. Yeah.
No, it is. The problem that I have is, again, him being 76, he's probably not on top of his game like he used to be anymore. You got Jesse Benton that married his granddaughter.
That whole campaign has been infiltrated.
Totally infiltrated.
People like Kokesh have been saying this for a while, and I have to tell you what, I watched that drunk fight between Tarpley and Jones over at Bilderberg last week, and a lot of people said that Tarpley was out of line or that Jones was out of line, or they took sides. But I got to tell you what, for whatever you don't like about Tarpley, I got to tell you, it almost looks like he was accurate with what he said, because now you have Rand Paul coming out and saying, he would be honored if he was picked for the vice presidential slot. It's very shady. All of a sudden he's, people talked about him doing this, and all of a sudden he's actually saying, almost like he's being told when you're going to come out and say this, when, they've got it all planned. There's a whole schedule already, just like the last time. It's all controlled. So I want, one has to wonder, was Tarpley correct?
Could be. I mean, you don't know. There's a lot of a lot of shady circumstances behind the whole thing. One of the things that kind of caught my eye early on was, and JJ just pointed this out in the chat room, is that Peter Thiel's his biggest contributor. And, of course, Peter Thiel, everybody knows, is the co-founder of PayPal. Now, we all know how PayPal is. PayPal is the biggest freaking racket, or one of the biggest rackets on the face of this planet. And, I mean, I could get into it, but they are a bunch of thug criminals. And to have somebody like that back in your campaign has to raise some sort of flag up there. Now, I'm always of the mindset, it's still money, and we can still put it to good use. But the problem is, oftentimes money comes with strings attached. And you just don't know what kind of strings were attached to that, and what Peter Thiel. Of course, everybody knows he attended Bilderberg also. So what exactly was his role in all this? Jesse Benton, again, I'm going to bring him up because I think that he is most certainly a wolf in sheep's clothing. I mean, he married his granddaughter, who happens to be Rand's daughter. And I just think there's some hijinks and shenanigans there as well. And again, guy's 76 years old. And I mean, I've heard the things about Ron Paul is a Mason and all this kind of stuff. That's fine, whatever. For 30 years, the guy's been just had a great track record. So I tend to not really give that as much weight. And if he was a plant for just this sort of event, man, that's a hell of a plan. You know what I'm saying? So when we come back, we'll discuss more of this, and I'm going to bring a couple of different viewpoints in on this. You're listening to the Conspiracy Chronicles on the Orion Talk Radio Network. We'll be right back, folks.
Of the 3 million plus edible food plants that grow on Earth,
Welcome back, folks. The email address is thefreedomlink@centurylink.net, thefreedomlink@centurylink.net. Joe Joseph here, along with Popeye from federaljack.com and Down the Rabbit Hole, and Ken Hildebrand from the Information Nation. That's theinformationnation.com. And, folks, the Ron Paul train wreck is upon us. It's really the only way I can describe it. I feel like my cojones have been kicked up through my tummy, up into my throat, and into my mouth. That's the only way I can describe just the disgust that I feel right now for what happened. But, like I said, I shall not draw any conclusions till I hear from the man himself. And no one should, to be quite honest with you.
Well, he already spoke, though. See, that's what pisses me off. He came out and spoke, and what did he say? Be cordial, don't be interruptive.
Well, yeah, I know. But see, that's the thing is it.
I'm a little pissed off, dude. I'm a little irritated.
I'm pissed. Don't get me wrong. I'm still not going to draw any conclusions yet. Just not going to. Because it's tough. But you know something? It led me to my next thought. You guys think that this can be solved peacefully at all? I mean, seriously. For example.
Not if they continue the things they're doing, no.
No, but try nonviolent revolution, right? Let's just say that. So you have to do something that you're going to get a lot of the populace behind you. Let's just say, for example, that you come up with a campaign to say, we're not going to pay federal income tax. We're all going to go and change our withdrawal, our withholding, to where it's bare bone minimum or zero, right? And you get enough people behind you. Yeah, you could feasibly crash the government. You could. They couldn't operate without it. They need that money on a weekly and biweekly basis in order to keep the government operating. They can print money, but it'll only work for so long. And but the problem is, how do you get enough people behind you to do that? So you've got the lethargy of the American public working against you there. And then you say, well, we've got a firebrand like Ron Paul that's doing the same thing, only maybe get him in the White House. Boy, he'll really change things. And as we've seen here, campaigns can get derailed 7,000 different ways. And it kind of speaks to the same idea that happens in the truther community, I guess you could say. I hate calling it that, but I'm going to call it that anyway. Just when you think that you can predict what's going to happen, when you think that you see the writing on the wall and you're going to prepare for that thing, that eventual thing that's going to happen, and it ends up never being what you think it's going to be. For example, the Gulf oil catastrophe. Who knew that kind of crap was going to happen? 9/11. Who knew that was going to happen? I mean, there were certain people that called it, but I mean, really, the reality of that, I mean, you just can't wrap your arms around something like that. And then Fukushima. Who knew? You know what I'm saying? It's very, very difficult to be able to visualize what's going to happen in the future. That 99 times out of 100, you're dead wrong. And it ends up being something totally out of left field. So I don't know yet, and I'm not going to draw any conclusions just yet. But I'm pissed. I'm hurt. I mean, this has been really bad. But anyway, on the 8th, I'm going to start here. Ron Paul was on the Kudlow Report, and I want to play this sound clip here. This is Ron Paul on the Kudlow Report. Here we go.
Let's bring in our very special guest. Here now is Republican presidential candidate Ron Paul. He's congressman from Texas. Congressman Paul, as always, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. I want to talk about your monetary hearing in just a moment, but politics are swirling around, if you'll permit me. Rick Santorum finally endorsed Mitt Romney last night. Congressman Paul, when will you endorse Mitt Romney?
Well, I'm still thinking about that. Not soon, because I'm still working very hard to maximize the number of delegates. And if you watch the news every weekend, we seem to do a lot better in picking up the states. You know, it may turn out that we're going to end up winning Iowa, and we've won a couple of these other states. So I'm not thinking about that as much as what kind of a presence we'll have, how many people we're going to have there, and what kind of an influence we can have on the platform in Tampa.
Well, there are a lot of reports that you're picking up delegates, particularly in these caucus states. But I want to ask you, I mean, what's the end game here? Do you want to try to deny Mitt Romney the nomination? Do you want to exact some policy or political price for your endorsement? Tell me the end game, sir.
Well, I don't know the end game yet because the votes haven't been counted. No, my goal isn't a negative goal. That is to stop somebody. My goal is to do my very best and to galvanize the support I have, because you do know that we're getting tremendous turnouts. We can get from 4, 5, even up to 8,000 people on campuses, and they're very concerned and very worried. So I want to take that and make sure it comes out in a positive manner to change policy. So we're very much involved in policy. So the longer I'm in it, the more delegates we have, the more presence we have, the better chance we're going to have to return to sound money and a more sensible foreign policy, and maybe do something with this deficit one of these days.
Have you spoken to Mitt Romney, particularly about your goals of sound money and the Austrian free market model? I would think Romney is sympathetic. I mean, have you spoken to him and said, Governor, I'd like to see these things in the Republican platform? Has that been going on?
No, it really hasn't. We haven't had that opportunity. We ran into each other a lot during the campaign, but most of it's been very friendly, more family-oriented conversations, but never anything into a deep discussion. And, of course, on the surface and in the debates, I found out, as he probably did too, that we don't have a whole lot of precise agreements, on our platform when it comes to foreign policy or monetary policy. But, maybe tax policy. But we're more, it's more about it than just tax policy. I mean, we want to deal with the role of government and what we're supposed to be doing in this deficit horrendous and how that is connected to the monetizing of debt by the Federal Reserve. And we think we should deal with a foreign policy change as well.
There's a Rasmussen poll out today, Congressman, of likely voters. They included you as a third-party candidate. It's a three-way tally. Mitt Romney gets 44%, Barack Obama gets 39%, Ron Paul gets 13%. I ask this question, sir, because in our prior interviews, you have said to me quite plainly that you are not anticipating a third-party run. Is that still your point of view?
Yeah, I don't have any plans for that. But I think the interesting thing there, if you extrapolate, it looks like some of my votes come from the independents and the Democrats, and the Republicans always worry, would he run third party, and what would it do to the party I have to endorse because I don't want to ruin the Republican Party. The plain truth is this philosophy of freedom and individual liberty and limited government is appealing to independents and moderates and even progressive Democrats when it comes to civil liberties and foreign policy. So there's nothing automatic about my appeal only being to Republicans. Quite frankly, I thought that was an interesting poll. The only thing is we've had a couple other polls where I do even a little bit better than that one.
Let me ask finally on money and sound money and the dollar and gold. These are things that you and I both hold dear, as we've discussed down through the years. In your hearing today.
So anyway, guys, the big thing that I'm getting from this now, this was the day of Rand Paul coming out and endorsing Mitt Romney. It doesn't sound like he's given up the ship. You know what I mean? What's your guys' thoughts on that? Popeye, you haven't said much.
I'm just really pissed off that, first of all, two things. Okay, one, that people are really just, again, this is another cult of personality thing, and they're letting it sidetrack this whole thing. You know what? I understand it's like getting kicked in the balls, but I'm not pissed at you. You know what I mean, Joe? But I'm just saying I'm irritated that this is, again, being used to it's almost like it's being used to take the wind out of everybody's sails. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, sure. It's unbelievable. Well, folks, we're just getting started here. When we come back, RonPaul2012.com is the official campaign site. And Jack Hunter, the Southern Avenger, radio talk show host, put out his response to Rand Paul's backing of Mitt Romney, and we'll, folks. But I'll tell you what, it's hard to do a broadcast about this when you got that stomach ache going, you know?
Yeah.
It really does. It hurts, man. It hurts. So, anyway, RonPaul2012.com, the official Ron Paul website, of course, has Jack Hunter that writes fairly frequently for him and does also some podcasts and everything else. He's also known as the Southern Avenger, radio talk show host. And he actually put out a quick snippet. It's about 8.5 minutes long, on why Rand was right to endorse Romney. Now, I haven't heard this yet, so we're going to listen to it together, and maybe we'll find out what their side of the story is. Now, this is on RonPaul2012.com. This is the official campaign website. So anything coming from this, I would think, would have to get the okay from RP himself.
But what is this? Is this the official response?
I don't know. This is their spokesman talking. So let's see what he says.
Why Rand was right to endorse Romney by Jack Hunter. What I'm about to say are my opinions and mine alone. This is not intended to be a statement from Senator Paul, Congressman Paul, or anyone else other than yours truly.
Oh, there you go.
I'm sharing this with you because I really do love you guys. This movement is as much a part of me as it is a part of you, and I'm married to it as much as you are. But please allow me to explain what has obviously and quickly become an emotional and confusing moment.
You think?
First, it should be noted that Rand Paul has always said he would endorse the Republican nominee. This is nothing new. Also, Senator Paul only made his endorsement after his father conceded that he would not be the nominee. Now as to why this matters. When I watched Rand Paul give his acceptance speech after winning his bid for U.S. Senate in 2010, I immediately knew three things. One, that I wanted this man to be president. Two, that he'd become the Liberty candidate with the highest probability of becoming president.
How about being a neocon?
And three, that to get to that point, he would necessarily need to endorse the 2012 Republican nominee for president, even if it wasn't his father. Now, that last part probably doesn't make sense to many of you.
Nope.
It made total sense to me then, and it makes total sense to me today. In a perfect world, and if the Republican Party was as actually conservative as it often pretends to be, Ron Paul would be the 2012 GOP presidential nominee. But he's not. Mitt Romney is, or will be. Senator Paul had to endorse him. Let me stress that word, had.
Oh, really?
This was non-negotiable.
Was there a gun to his head?
If the Republican nominee had been Rick Santorum, Rick Perry, Herman Cain, Michelle Bachmann, Newt Gingrich, or any other candidate who ran this year. Senator Paul's endorsement was not for Romney per se, nor was it even for Rand's.
That's funny. He said something totally different. Hold on one second. It wasn't for Romney per se. As a matter of fact, I think he was on Fox News saying that he's that he's happy to endorse Romney. That's not per se to me. I mean, well, yeah, it's just like my wife said. They got a lot in common. They probably would, you know. I mean, look at this, Rand. You're a flip-flopper. That's what you are, dude. I don't care how you do. If you don't just go and endorse somebody because he's a Republican or you assume he's going to be the Republican nominee. You don't do that. You stick to your guns. You do what's right. The people that are counting on you and depending on you to stand by your values and virtues, you just totally took any hope of your old man having any sort of effect at this RNC out the window. Out the window. It's a damn shame. It really is. And I don't know. I can't see. It bothers me. But I digress. Here we go.
It was for our benefit. It was for the movement's benefit. This is unquestionably true in so many ways, though it is entirely reasonable upon first glance to question it. Allow me to explain. Imagine that Barack Obama is reelected this year. Now imagine that it is 2016, and running for president on the Republican side, you have Senator Rand Paul and 10 other high-profile and big-money candidates all vying to be the nominee. Now imagine that Senator Paul, with his impeccable Tea Party and pro-liberty voting record, begins to emerge as the front-runner. Many in the establishment start getting uncomfortable. The neoconservatives really start freaking out. If Rand had not endorsed Romney in 2012, every single Republican in that race would use his non-endorsement to bash Senator Paul relentlessly. Senator Rand Paul didn't even do what was important enough to keep Obama out of the White House. Rand Paul helped to elect Obama. He's not even a real Republican. Now, this may sound silly to you or I. But remember, some of us still can't understand why parts of Ron's message don't penetrate the mainstream either. We are not typical voters. We have to stop acting and thinking like we are. This will not sound silly to future Republican voters for whom partisanship will always remain a primary and insurmountable voting factor. Now imagine Rand Paul wins the nomination in 2016. Imagine that he wins the general election. Imagine a President Paul with the aid of a Republican Party that has been heavily influenced by his father in the liberty movement, getting popular support for things like balancing the budget, cutting $1 trillion, auditing the Federal Reserve, repealing the Patriot Act and NDAA, zeroing out foreign aid, not starting unnecessary wars, and substantively lessening America's global military footprint. In other words, a presidency, a party, and an America that actually begins to become closer to all of our ideals than anything we ever thought imaginable. Will anyone care whether or not Rand Paul endorsed Mitt Romney for president in 2012?
I know I will.
Probably not. But they will care if none of this ever happens because Rand wasn't willing to do things like endorsing Romney. The endorsement isn't about Romney. It's about us and what we ultimately want, always. Now imagine a different scenario where Barack Obama loses and Mitt Romney becomes president. Now imagine President Romney being as bad as Bush was, more spending, bigger government, less liberty. Who will be the voice to oppose such a Republican president? The Democrats' problem will be that President Romney doesn't want to spend enough money, so they're useless. Will there be a Republican voice willing to take on the president in his own party? If Romney becomes president, Rand Paul will be Robert Taft or Romney's Dwight Eisenhower, the leader of the conservative resistance in the Senate. George W. Bush had little to no such resistance during his Republican tenure.
Yeah, because that's what Rand Paul's been doing. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've seen him stand up from time to time about things concerning liberty, but he openly supports the war with Iran. You know? He even said he'd back it. He'd vote for it. So, I mean, this guy, he normally puts out some good stuff, but so far, I'm just sickened by what I'm hearing. And the compromise, you know what I mean? Since when are we supposed to compromise, our values just to back this guy? Oh, yeah, let's just keep the Republican Party. Yeah, let's just do that. Yeah. Yeah, because that has nothing, you know what? Whether you keep the Republican Party alive or not doesn't matter. The two-party system's a giant hoax as it is. All that is a seek and destroy, a divide and conquer. Now, what do you guys think so far?
Well, not to sound like a conspiracy theorist on Conspiracy Through Chronicles, but wasn't it rumored that Mittless Romney was at Bilderberg?
Yeah, absolutely.
4 eyewitness confirmations that he was there.
No, you know what, guys? I don't even need that.
I know.
I mean, Woodward
and Bernstein had one less for Watergate. Let's just remember that.
Right, exactly. But, I mean, I wouldn't need that because that, to me, is totally expected.
All right, now, let me point something out to you. Have you noticed Barack Obama lately when he's been giving his little talks about how wonderful everything is. Look at his eyes. There is no longer that sparkle in his eyes. I have a feeling they told him after Bilderberg, you're done. You're one term, you're out. Yeah. And as far as Romney goes, or Rand Paul, it would be very easy to manipulate him just to turn around and say, it was reported not too long ago that a Supreme Court justice had 2 of his homes broken into. Do you think that's by chance? One in this country, he has a summer home or a winter home or whatever it is down in Puerto Vallarta or something. The powers that are out there reach a long way, and it's quite simple to twist somebody's arm.
It sure is, man. And let me say this, too. Angela just said this in my ear, that Rand Paul was confronted about whether or not it was okay for senators to go and attend Bilderberg in violation of the Logan Act. And he would not comment on it. No comment, he said.
Because he was probably in the basement with Romney.
Yeah. Performing some oral copulation. We'll be right back after these messages. Last segment of Hour 1 coming up.
Oral cops of the nation?
Senator Paul, can I get a quick comment from you, if I may?
Sure.
Just what is your message?
Who are you with?
WGCN Radio in Chicago.
Okay.
What is your message to supporters of your father, your supporters, about Governor Romney and your support for him?
Well, I think my dad's supporters have had a great success. We're going to have a lot of delegates at the National Convention. The chairman of the Iowa Party is a former Ron Paul person. Chairman of the Nevada Party is a Ron Paul supporter. And I think by going to the convention, working on the platform, continuing to participate in the party, it means that conservative, libertarian Republicans can have an influence. And so I think he's had a big influence. And he's always said that this is bigger than just him. It's a movement. And I think that he's had a great impact and will continue to have a great impact.
2 quick questions. One more. The sanctions on Iran. Your thoughts on that? Your father had mentioned that any type of sanctions is an act of war. The sanctions were economic sanctions. Is that a stance of economic warfare with Iran and Syria?
I look at the sanctions slightly different than my father, and I voted for the sanctions, but I added an amendment to the sanctions.
Neocon.
It was an important amendment. I added an amendment last time that said nothing in this bill is to be construed as a declaration of war or as a use of authorization of force. I'm voting and have voted in favor of sanctions in hopes that they prevent war.
And one final question. Senator John Kerry was at Bilderberg.
Senator Paul, can I get a picture with you?
My car, can you take a picture, will you let me?
Here it comes, everybody.
No.
They're going to listen. Senator, can I just one quick question as we can walk and talk?
I already gave you a couple. I got to keep going.
Just walk and talk. It was reported Senator John Kerry was at the Bilderberg meeting in Virginia. Would you support looking into whether or not he violated the Logan Act?
No comment.
No comment.
Wah, 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 wah. That's because I was in the basement, Julio, and
That's right. I was in the basement.
That sounded like Julio from We Are Change Chicago.
Yeah.
He rocks, dude. He's got a set of brass ones that wouldn't fit in a dump truck, that kid.
But, I mean, do you see his true character? Well, I have a slightly different stance on the Iran sanctions than my father. You see,
because I'm a neocon, and I don't mind killing babies.
Yes. The hell?
They're not white babies in America. If they're brown babies in another country, it's okay.
Well, what do you expect? I mean, seriously, dude, what do you expect a country to do when you wage economic warfare on them like that? You force their hand. They have no choice but to fight.
May I remind you, this is the same kind of stuff that we pulled with Japan before we were attacked.
Absolutely.
Just so everybody's clear.
No, absolutely. And to hear him say, well, I voted in favor of them to prevent war. But yeah, we put this language in there that says, this is not a declaration of war in any way. Well, if it was a declaration of war, perhaps it would say declaration of war. And you might as well declare it, because when you start taking away the ability of a country to be able to provide for its own people, and then those people get pissed, something's going to happen. I mean, think about it, Ken. How would we feel if that happened to us?
To all of those hawks out there and that want the sanctions, let me remind you, you don't hurt the regime. You only hurt the average person. You only hurt the guy that's trying to make a living and feed his family. You don't hurt you think you're going to hurt Ahmadinejad and his band of renown? Hell no, you're not going to hurt him. He's got everything that he needs. You're going to hurt the average guy who gets up in the morning, opens up his shop, and he's trying to sell his goods, or the farmer out there. These are the people that get hurt with these bullshit sanctions. And that's all they are, is bullshit. And unless you have a regime that really cares about their people, you're not going to need sanctions to begin with. What you're looking at here is you are looking at pure New World Order rhetoric to get rid of us useless eaters. That's all it is. That's all it is.
Dirty shame, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It hurts the average guy. I mean, if they did that to the United States and they cut off funding and they stopped us from selling our goods and stopped us from doing commerce and that, how many people out there that have jobs right now are going to like it when they no longer have a job, when you can no longer put food on the table, when you can't pay your mortgage, when you can't pay for your car because some other country is mad at our leaders? Hell, we're mad at our leaders, but we can't put sanctions on them. The sanctions never go on the politicians. They always go on the average person. Wars never really hurt the politicians. They always hurt the poor bastard that's working for a living.
That's
Wars
right.
For rich people to play a game of, world domination, and for the average person to put up with the consequences. I wouldn't pee on a lot of them if they were on fire.
No, sir. Well spoken. Well spoken indeed. And it's funny, too, because if that happened to us, think about what would happen when trade is restricted and everything else.
We'd be bombing the shit out of whoever was restricting our trade within 72 hours. That's
You'd hope we would. You'd hope we would.
No, Ahmed want to go talk to him.
But the other thing that happens in a situation like that, when you've got people starve. Now, mind you, the United States is not used to this type of scenario or situation. But if that were to happen, then you would have martial law instantly. And, rule by military is not good. And secondly, do you think those generals or those politicians will be the ones starving? Oh, no. You see, they have the guns. And so do we. But, I mean, in that type of scenario, you'd be hard. I mean, it would be hard. And to think that wouldn't be a declaration of war, Rand, you're sadly mistaken. I mean, that's just political BS.
Two things I have to say to our troops. Number one, remember your oath to the Constitution, not to some scumbag in the White House or some senator or some representative. That's number one. Number two, are you willing to march down your own street, kill your brother, lock up your mother and father and your grandmother because some asshat general told you to do it? If you are, you're the lowest form of life.
Amen to that, bro.
Yeah, military, by the way, isn't going to take care of you when you get shot. And, 10 years later, if you still live and you have, horrible wounds and you're disabled, don't think they're going to buy you a house and give you a car and do all this. No, they don't give a shit about you. So pull your head from your asses, remember your oath, and do what's right and protect the citizens of this country.
We had a guy at the Marine Corps League, young guy came back from Iraq, and had some kind of a disease that set his nerves on fire. I mean, this guy some days had great days, other days could barely walk.
Wow.
The Marine Corps League got together with Habitat for Humanity, and the guys volunteered their time so he could rack up enough hours to get that house. Those are the people that are going to take care of you. The guys that are going to take care of you are the guys that are out there with you now and the guys that have been out there in the past. If you're expecting these politicians to do it, you are so wrong.
Couldn't have said it any better myself, my man. So it'll be interesting to see how this all unfolds, as I've said before. But it just goes to show you the importance of why you start movements like this at the bottom up and you make relationships, locally within your community and things like that. And you start to, pass ideas, and then, you start friendships and bonds. And the next thing you know, you've got a pretty good network of people. So should things go down that road, or things get rough. And believe me, folks, if you've seen any of the economic data that's come out here recently, you know that we're in the start of another downturn that's going to eventually lead to something that's going to make Lehman Brothers look like a walk in the park. Because this is not, that 2008 crash was not the big one.
That was the start of it.
That's right. That's right. And all of the growth, quote unquote, and the summer of recovery and all that stuff was simply government funded. It was government funded the whole time. That's why we're running these $1.5 trillion deficits. Wars aside, it was all government fueled. So now that money is starting to dry up because all that appropriated money's been spent. And municipalities are now once again feeling the pinch, which is why our commander-in-chief, if you want to call him that, comes out and does a little press conference. You know, he doesn't do that too often. And he was without his teleprompter, and he says, well, you know, the economy's still chugging along, man. That private sector, they're doing great. You know, it's the government. It's the local and state governments that are really struggling right now, laying off people and everything else. We need to go there and support them. Sure.
Oh, you know what that means? That he's talking about federalization of your local government, Joe.
That's right. That's right. And you know, good status, that's exactly what you want.
Hey, didn't he just sign an executive order saying something very similar to that?
Why, yes.
Oh, but I guess I'm crazy because I see how things fit like a puzzle.
Wasn't Ronald Reagan who came out with revenue sharing?
I think it was. I think you're right.
Let's talk about revenue.
That would be socialism?
Well, let's look at it real quick. All the money goes to Washington, and Washington doles it out equally until you do what Washington
communism
you to do, and then they withhold the funds. They're doing that to schools. They're doing that to municipalities.
Right.
There is where it starts. It starts withholding.
Yeah. People don't know, Ken. They don't know what freedom really feels like or what it is. You know, we'll talk a little bit about that in hour number 2. Because it's important to grasp that. I mean, this is a central message in Ron Paul's campaign, so we'll talk a little bit about that, too. Have you both along for hour number 2. Before we get into Adam Kokesh, the Washington Times came out with a piece today. Will Ron Paul delegates make Romney flip-flop again? With all but one of the Republican primaries concluded, there are 2 things that are clear. The first is that unless something very improbable occurs, Mitt Romney will be the Republican nominee for 2012. The second is that Ron Paul will have an army of delegates at the RNC in August. The media continue to wonder what Paul hopes to accomplish with those delegates, although he has been clear from the beginning. His primary goal was to win the nomination. His secondary goal was to influence the direction of the party. Paul has remained consistent in this strategy. In a June 6th email to his supporters, Paul said, quote, "We stand to send nearly 200 bound delegates to the Republican National Convention in Tampa. What more, we will send several hundred additional supporters to Tampa who, while bound to Romney, believe in our ideas of liberty, constitutional government, and a common-sense foreign policy. When it's all said and done, we will likely have as many as 500 supporters as delegates on the floor. And with this total, while the total is not enough to win the nomination, it puts us in a tremendous position to grow our movement and shape the future of the GOP. Some of Paul's supporters dispute that any of the RNC delegates are bound to vote for any candidate, citing Republican Party Rule number 38. Obviously, Ron Paul doesn't see it that way. However, one thing everyone acknowledges is that no delegate to the RNC is bound to any candidate's position on the issues. That means that Paul's 500 delegates can vote any way they want regarding the Republican Party platform. That might not sound exciting, but consider the implications. The nominee is expected to adopt the platform as his own, or at least not take a position that directly contradicts it. Romney's positions are diametrically opposed to Paul's on a range of issues. What if the Ron Paul delegates get one or more of Paul's positions into the platform? For example, Romney supports the Bush doctrine of preemptive wars against nations that pose a threat to the security of the United States. Paul rejects this policy, insisting that Congress formally declare war before the president orders planned military action. Contrary to popular belief, a declaration of war is not permission by the Congress to start a war. A declaration of war is just that, a declaration that war already exists. Whenever the Congress has declared war in the past, it has done so citing the overt acts of war that the nation in question has already committed against the United States. The whole concept of declaring war rules out preemptive war. That's why George W. Bush could not have obtained a declaration of war on Iraq. There were no overt acts of war committed by Iraq against the United States. I love the way that neocons try to justify this, fellas. It would have been difficult to achieve a declaration of war against Afghanistan in the light of the Taliban offer to prosecute Osama bin Laden if evidence were presented of his guilt. Bush rejected the offer, saying, "There is no need to discuss innocence or guilt. We know he's guilty." If Paul supporters were to get a declaration of war requirement into the Republican Party platform, preemptive war would indeed be off the table. Romney would have to defy the party or flip-flop on his current position, which, of course, we all know he's very accustomed to, because the man has absolutely no values or virtues or actual good things or reasons why he wants to run for president. This is just a selfish, overt power grab. This is a status symbol to Mr. Romney. It has nothing to do with any sort of values that he may have or care about the betterment of the country. The only way that he cares about the benefit or betterment of the country is if it benefits him. And that's the way it is.
Preemptive strikes on enemies of the United States. I call for the total and complete destruction of the Fed.
Yeah, why not? They're violating posse comitatus now. So, you know what? Why not?
The Fed's, whatever they call it, their charter comes up again next year.
Oh, boy.
So
I wonder how close that vote's going to be.
Well, if without Ron Paul there will be no dissenters.
No. The only hope that we have, there are a handful of libertarian slant independents out there that are running and are running a pretty successful campaign, one being Tisha Cassidy in the 3rd Congressional District of Colorado. She's running against a Democrat and a Republican. She's running as an independent and doing fairly well so far, really busting her hump trying to get everything done. But Cassidy2012.com is where you go to learn more about how she stands on things, and very similar to Ron Paul. Very similar to Ron Paul. So, I mean, yeah, you may get one or two, but what's that?
That's what I mean.
You know what I mean? What is that?
It's not going to make any difference. The Fed will be around for as long as they want to be around because right now they pull the purse strings.
Right.
The last guy to try to get rid of the Fed ended up dead in Dallas.
That's right. That's right. And of course, you know, it was done by a expert marksman, Soviet sympathizer.
Yeah, considering they've got a picture of him standing in the doorway as the motorcade went by.
Come on, man.
Yeah, because you can pick somebody off at that range.
Of course you can.
With a Mannlicher Carcano.
They don't make guns like they used to.
No, you're right. Well, you know, they don't make bullets actually like they used to. It's that damn magic bullet.
Yes. Well, that's what I'm saying. It's like, you know, back in the medieval times, there was like, wizards and everything else, and they were doing warfare like that. And you had Merlin and stuff. Well, the same goes for guns, you know. It's more like, these epic tales of when there were magic bullets.
Well, you stand on the ground floor and you shoot into the building. The bullet travels up the stairway, through the door, out the window, down, and kills the person you want to kill.
That's right. That's what I'm saying. That's a hell of a shot.
Well, it's like in that movie, Intelligent Bullets, where the guy could just, put the guy's DNA in the bullet and he could shoot it and it would go around corners and over cars and underneath.
Oh, you're thinking of that movie from the late 80s with Gene Simmons and Magnum P.I. with him and his mustache. What was the name of that movie? There was the robotic spiders, and they would come up and inject, acid into people.
Yeah.
Runaway. That's what it was called. Dude, you want to talk about a dystopian, like pre-programming? Ken's right.
Weren't you just talking about that the other day, dude?
He shoots a gun. Gene Simmons' gun, he shoots it at you, and the bullet follows you around until it gets you. They're working on that technology right now.
That's right. No, actually, they've got it. It's out. I think Wired.com did an article on that. The bullet, it's almost like not a heat seek. Yeah, I think it was a heat-seeking bullet. Fired out of a gun. I mean, how crazy is that? You know, it'll just go on your IR signature or whatever.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, that's
great.
Good. That's all we need. That's all we need.
So if anybody wonders what we're talking about, the movie's called Runaway. It's like from the late 80s with Tom Selleck, his mustache, and Gene Simmons.
Well, why do you think they want to chip people? Then they don't have to put your DNA in there. They just put your chip code in there.
That's right.
Think of it.
Yeah, true. They can just put in the frequency and have it follow you.
The possibilities are endless.
And we're going to get into chips in the next hour.
Ooh, boy. We're going to talk about, like, Ponch and John?
No, kind of like Frito-Lays and... no.
Oh, okay.
I got an article from Wired magazine. I think you guys will like it. Actually, from... I got a video to play.
That's
I know
awesome.
This is radio, but we're going to get into this. We're going to get into that quite a bit.
That's right.
The Pentagon wants to chip the troops. What do you two think about that? Because I know as a veteran myself, you
wish you were chipped, don't you?
I'm punching you out. You come at me with a needle. Try.
Hey, come on! They came at us with like 10,000 needles.
Can you imagine now, dude? They're just going to put that stuff. You know the jars, the big glass things they come up to with the pneumatic needles. That's what they're going to do. They're just going to be loaded with microchips, and it's going to be bing, bing, bing.
Well,
bing.
how do you know you
dust.
get a? Yeah, I know. Well, Smart Dust is out there. I mean, they use that now. And anything that you hear about that's already out there and in the open. But gosh, any vet that's been out there that's been through the walk in the line in boot camp where you're just like, oh,
you go in a human, come out a pincushion.
Oh my gosh, man, it was awful.
They're reasoning that there's no correlation between that and how sick everybody gets.
Dude, we got like I'm telling you, probably like 8 or 10 vaccines in one. Bam, 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 bam. You just walk in the line and they're hitting you with that pneumatic gun on each side. Holy crap. Unbelievable. We'll be right back after these messages, folks. 3 minutes. Welcome back, folks. Don't forget to hit that chip in button on the main page and then again on every host page as your contributions help this network go. Yo. And we've seen a 120% increase in listenership in just the last month alone. Pretty damn cool, if you ask me. I'm joined here tonight by Ken Hildebrand of the Information Nation. Don't forget, he's coming up at 9 p.m., so he's doing a 4-hour radio shift. And old Popeye, he's going to do 6. Woo! Man, that guy's hardcore, let me tell you.
I love when you do your Ric Flair.
No, that's a woo! I love, see, they just don't do anything like they used to. You know, WWF was cool back in the day. I mean, come on, like WrestleMania 3 and everything like that, Iron Sheik.
You know, I know a guy that used to work as a security guard. You know, the security guards, I'm doing air quotes.
Yeah.
That would run up and get the crap kicked out of him in a skit. And good friend of mine. And he told me once that he sat in a car and, you know, he smoked weed. And he was sitting in a car smoking a joint. And the Iron Sheik, he said to the Iron Sheik, hey, you want a hit? Because he was sitting in a car with the Iron Sheik. They were, I guess going wherever the hell they were going. And the Iron Sheik looked at him and he was like, no, I'm good, and pulled out a crack pipe. Started smoking crack. He smoked. Apparently, he got into it, I guess, because he was, eating painkillers and everything else, because his knees were so shot from so many years of all that wrestling and jumping up and down. But yeah,
because that's what I'd do as a painkiller. Let me just pull out a crack rock. Hell with ibuprofen.
Well, you have your way; they have their way.
I know, but I mean, it's just a little bit weird, Ugh, unbelievable. So anyway, we're talking about Ron Paul and this travesty that's occurred. And Adam Kokesh, had a little something to say about it, didn't he, buddy?
Yes, he did.
Catch you right in the middle of eating one of those pretzels, huh? That's right. Yeah.
He's being chipped.
He's being chipped as we speak, yes.
Let me cue it up for you. You ready for Kokesh?
Sure.
All right, let me play it for you. He's talking about Jesse Benton and all this insider crap that's going on. Because he had just interviewed an insider, this lady, I forget her name. It's on his channel on YouTube. And she was visibly and verbally upset about what was going on. So he gets into a little bit of the backstory. So I'm picking up. It's about like almost 17 minutes into his video, but here you go.
From her of what's going on here. But when Rand Paul decided that he was going to get into politics and run for Senate in Kentucky, his father, like any good loving father, as Ron undoubtedly is, got behind him as much as he could with the full force of the Lovolution behind him, and Rand Paul was elected to the U.S. Senate. But when he beat his establishment choice in the primary, who incidentally was quite the neocon former Democrat, the establishment, Mitch McConnell specifically, sent an adult in the room to be a part of the campaign and represent the establishment, and that was Trygve Olsen, formerly involved with the International Republican Institute, a tax-funded regime change operation under the rubric of the National Endowment for Democracy. Olsen was involved in several of the color revolutions that swept Eastern Europe and the Central Asian former Soviet republics during the Bush years. That, according to Justin Raimondo of antiwar.com, in his article from February 3rd of this year, Can Ron Paul Be Tamed? And the answer, unfortunately, may be yes, sort of. So to continue with the story, Trygve Olsen then decided to bring in and blow up one young staffer from the 2008 presidential campaign who had successfully made himself quite a leech on Ron Paul, Jesse Benton, who, while cheating on a woman he was living with, met Valerie Pyatt, Ron Paul's granddaughter, on the campaign trail and ended up marrying her. Trygve Olsen brings him in as a patsy to be the campaign manager for the Rand Paul campaign, which at that point was his to lose, and arguably from the beginning his to lose, given who he was up against, and gave Jesse Benton the credit for that, which allowed him to work his way up within the Ron Paul Inc. establishment, eventually becoming campaign manager, Ron Paul's right-hand man, and the snake whispering in his ear. So, now onto the 2012 presidential campaign. Trygve Olsen, as Viking Strategies, has received over $200,000 from the Ron Paul presidential campaign, while effectively taking the teeth out of the non-interventionist message of the Ron Paul platform and subverting the movement into the Republican Party effectively through Rand Paul and his ambition. And it might not be some conspiracy behind this other than Trygve Olsen and his personal desire to squeeze money out of Ron Paul, his natural desire to see the non-interventionist message squashed. But as for this endorsement, Rand Paul endorsing Mitt Romney, I'll bet Rand got Ron's permission. And it went something like, "Hey, Dad, I'm going to endorse Mitt Romney. I don't think it's a good idea. I agree with you more than him, obviously, but this is going to further my political career." And because Ron has done this before, Ron has made deals with the Republican Party. Ron has agreed not to support anyone challenging Republican incumbents, at least in the state of Texas. And who knows what other deals have been struck behind the scenes. Rand has simply taken it to the next level, but the difference is he didn't start with a grounding in the message of liberty. And as I said, this has always been Ron's fatal flaw, not knowing who to trust and trusting the wrong people.
So what he's saying is that Paul knows about this. in a nutshell. You can go watch the whole video. It's called Rand Paul's Endorsement of Mitt Romney Explained. And this is Kokesh's angle on it. Who knows if this is 110% accurate, but he has been right about Jesse Benton and all the stuff that because Kokesh has come out against Jesse Benton for a while now.
Yeah, he's been pretty vocal against it.
And everything points to that Tarpley might have been correct, Joe. So the question is, did Paul do this just to set his son up? Was there more political stuff behind it? And I mean, I think he wanted to spread his message, but I don't really think, I don't, I really don't know what to think. Honestly, from what I see, turning off any emotion, turning off anything, just from using logic alone, from what I see, it looks like Tarpley might have been correct.
Yeah. No,
that's what I see. You want to know the truth? That's what I see. I see Tarpley might have been accurate.
Well, there's a lot of people that have been saying, like my bad sense has gone off, my intuition's telling me something, and they kind of put it off to the side, because it's Ron Paul. He's been consistent. He's always been consistent, but there's been some writing on the wall. And that's the problem that we have is we kind of feel like, man, we've seen this coming, but then again, we didn't want to believe that it was coming, or we didn't want to believe that it was a possibility. But the fact is that you're right. Ron Paul could be, hey, I'm 76. I really didn't want to get elected anyway, so I'm going to do what I can to keep the legacy going. Keep that Paul name out there.
The only problem is the legacy is not what...
Oh, it's bad. It's awful.
Ugh.
Rand Paul is not Ron Paul, and not in the slightest. And I mean, I think we've given enough evidence tonight to kind of highlight that. I mean, you heard yourself in hour number 1. You heard him, no comment as far as senators violating the Logan Act, attending Bilderberg. Unbelievable. We'll be right back in 3 minutes, folks. Don't go away.
Hey everybody, it's Maggie Roth. My show, The Unsolicited Opinion, can be heard here on Orion Talk Radio Network every Sunday at noon. Listen in.
Welcome back, folks. Popeye the other night did a great interview with one of the remaining survivors from the USS Liberty. I mean, a really, really heavy-hitting interview. Even the hardest, hardcore dude out there, man, I'll tell you what, bring your tissues, because it's a tearjerker. But anyway, if you go to DTRH Archives or even the Freedom Link Radio's YouTube channel, you can listen to that interview in its entirety, and I mean, really, anybody that's a vet, especially a Navy vet out there, I mean, you can actually visualize this thing going down. Oh, amazing interview, dude. So, guys, go out there and
I think that's one of the reasons why it hits, veterans themselves can put themselves in it, but guys that have ever been on a ship, ever served on a ship, i.e., I mean, there's ships in the Army, but more so, all veterans will appreciate it, but it'll really, if you're a Marine Corps vet, a Navy vet, or a Coast Guard vet, because you served on a ship, you understand, that shipboard damage control, firefighting, repelling attacks, because we're all taught that stuff. That's the basics. You're taught that the first day or two you're on board the ship, as soon as you get on board. So I think it's because we can visualize it, you know what I mean? And we can visualize being there. And for the guys that have never been on a ship, but especially the Army guys that have served on ground in combat and been under fire and been in situations like that, they can understand that kind of thing too. And it just hits you, dude. It really does. I don't know any guy, any veteran, doesn't matter what branch of the service, all 5 branches, I don't know anybody that has heard that interview and not gotten choked up. I've had guys that were special forces in Vietnam, and guys I know that were special forces in Iraq, and in Afghanistan. And these guys were choked up fighting back tears. You know what I'm saying?
Sure. Absolutely, dude. I mean, it was hardcore. I mean, even the toughest man out there would have a hard time. I mean, whew. So folks, listen to it Listen to it tonight, whenever you can. It's an amazing interview, and it really highlights the level of corruption that these power brokers take it to. I don't think there's a level that they could sink to. I think it's a bottomless abyss. Don't you guys think?
Somebody asked me that. They said, they made a comment on the YouTube archive, something to the effect of, I didn't think that this story was any more treacherous until I actually heard this interview. Absolutely disgusting.
It is disgusting.
And it just goes to show you the levels that these people will go to. And that's why, like when I interviewed Jim Mars, we talked about this. And it's important to know this kind of stuff because you have to know what these people are capable of, why they do the things they do, what they do. If we have any hope in getting things back to some sort of freedom or whatever, you have to be willing to accept the sick reality of things. And these people will they spare no expense, Joe. They do not care.
No, I know. I mean, we're cucarachas to them, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
seriously.
Nothing. We're nothing
that's
but
what
cockroaches.
They are. These cockroaches.
You recently went off on that.
Yes, I did. And to be quite honest with you, I just can't. I personally could not view other people in that way. I just can't do it. I'm not capable of it. I'm not wired that way. But I will tell you this. I have a different opinion of them now. Well, I have for quite some time. But, I mean, to hear them actually say that in such it's just obscene. It really is. Who the hell do these people think they are?
God.
I mean, outside of that, just excluding God.
Honestly, you should be incensed by the fact that somebody like Schmeagol, that this guy, like seriously, and people still focus on Rockefeller and Kissinger and all these guys. They're old, man. They're going to be, first of all, Rockefeller will be dead within the next 10 years. Okay?
Yes, I would love if you'd fuel me up at the airport as I'm going through in my wheelchair.
Well, Joe put it the best way the other day. I mean, this guy concentrates his whole day on not pooping himself. Okay, yeah. That's his whole day.
That's it.
World domination is no longer on the agenda.
That's right. I'm doing everything I can to keep control of my bowel movements.
Yeah, exactly. That's his agenda. It's not world domination. It's bowel domination.
That's it. I mean, when you're 96 years old, how effective can you be?
The problem is the people that came up that he brought up behind him.
That's exactly where I was going with that, Ken. The people you have to look at are the younger generations now. And not even the people that he brought up, not even like his son, but the people that they're bringing into power and the people that they're ushering in. This new blood that they bring, we have to pay attention to that because Kissinger and Rockefeller and all these guys, they're going to be dead in like 10, 15 years, and then nobody's going to know who to focus on. Then who do we focus on?
And they have the advantage of having centuries been at this time and time again. They've never relented. Whereas with us, we've only been at this for a little while now, but you've had generations asleep at the wheel. So, you're not as up to speed on it as these power brokers are, these NWO, Illuminati, Henry Kissinger, you name it. I mean, they just pass this stuff along, they try, they fail, they try again, they fail again, and each time they learn, and each time they get a little bit farther. And I'm telling you,
you have to realize, remember the movie Roots?
Oh, yeah.
Where he could repeat his lineage all the way back?
Sure.
These people here have been at this for so long, and they know every cotton-picking thing they've done. What works, what doesn't work, why it worked, why it didn't work, and they're just getting to the point now of putting it all together. This has been in the works for generations. This hasn't been in the works for the last 5 years.
Yeah, Ken, think about it this way. Okay, Godfrey de Bouillon, and I'm probably pronouncing his name a little wrong, but whatever. He's the guy that was in charge after the First Crusade over in Jerusalem, right? Well, his direct blood lineage is the Bush family. So isn't it ironic that his relatives, a couple thousand years later, go ahead and start another crusade back into the Middle East?
Isn't it interesting, too, that, of course, the Saddam Hussein, who's the first one that they actually offed in all of this in the Middle East, this whole Middle East debacle, his lineage ties him directly to King Nebuchadnezzar. So, I mean, you're looking at, I could see it even as far back as that. I mean, these religious wars, and that's
dude. Christopher Everard has talked about this, that there's certain people that their blood lineage goes back to, some of these great kings throughout history. Right. Not just the Illuminati, but there's civilians like in Iraq. That's why there was he says that explains a lot of the carnage that the United States went out and purposely did against civilians. Right. I'm not talking about guys losing their shit because they have 18 combat tours under their belt.
No, I know.
I'm talking about when they send in the special forces to go take out a specific family or whatever, and it's these bloodlines. He said that date back to a lot of these ancient Sumer, and these people don't know it. They're just simple Iraqi people, but the government, through using the government of Iraq's records, were able to trace a lot of this stuff, and that's why they went after certain people. So interesting concept.
No, it is. But there's a level of validity to it. I mean, there really is. This stuff goes way back. And that's why these guys are way good at what they do. That's why...
It's family warfare.
Yeah.
And we're caught in the middle of it.
We're caught in the middle of it. Us peasants with our pitchforks and our torches. The only problem is we can't even find our pitchforks and our torches.
So let's stop. Let's just stop taking part in this crap.
Well, that's what I say, don't participate. But the problem is how do you get people not to participate?
Can you imagine if the entire military, if the soldiers in all the different countries just turned around and realized what was going on and said, no.
Just drop your arms.
Yeah, we're not going to do it. What are they going to do? What are you going to have? Maybe one or two guys you'll have one or two politicians or people in power maybe get upset. Maybe somebody will get hurt or killed. But very quickly, things would change. Because if nobody will go fight these wars for these douchebags, they're not going to go fight them.
Better yet, send the troops over there, and when they get there, they turn around and put up a front line to protect the civilians and say, go ahead, kill yourself. But you're not coming in here and killing innocent civilians.
Exactly.
Children, just so you can gain more oil, more gold, more gems, whatever in the hell you want, more land. It's all BS with these people.
Why do you think it's so hard? Why do you think it's so hard for people to not participate? That's the question.
It was said very good in my show last week.
Yeah.
Where I did I played that interview that Intel Hub had with that guy that was arrested at Bilderberg.
Yeah.
And he was talking about the good cops. Well, they got families to feed and mortgages, and that's the problem. People are more concerned about their things than they are about their freedom.
His crotchetiness.
Yes.
Live on the airwaves. And we'll be joining him, me and Popeye. So the hijacking, whoop, 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 echelon. The hijacking of Ken Hildebrand's show will commence.
That thing must go off, dude. It must be smoking at the end of a Sunday night.
I'm telling you, man, just like a mushroom cloud. And
you just set it off again.
Oh, gosh, there we go again. Oh, no.
Apparently, you can't even say, you say cold, virus, sneeze, anything like that. It's like, whoop, whoop, whoop. You could be you could be a terrorist, Ridiculous, dude. My neighbor's got the flu. Was he working a bioweapon? No, I highly doubt it.
Is that like the chair is blue? Is it like code? Yes, the road is painted green.
No, it's yellow.
Oh, yes. Oh, not good. Scramble.
Follow the yellow brick road.
So, yeah, it's interesting. Since this is Conspiracy Chronicles, I want to get into a little something that just came out on the Mail Online that might perk your interest a little bit. And that's beware the spy in the sky after those Street View snoopers, Google and Apple, use planes that can film you sunbathing in your back garden. Oh, yeah. Software giants will use military-grade cameras to take powerful satellite images.
So wait a minute. You mean it's a surprise to people that the NSA, Google, is taking photos with high-resolution cameras. Do people really think that Google Earth images that you see, the Google, like if you look on Google Maps and you zoom in,
of course,
zoom in, they think that's the most detailed thing that they have out there? Do you really? Really?
Yeah.
You think that's the most detailed thing? Let me tell you something. When I was in the Coast Guard, we had access. There's certain, there's different bases. Joe knows what I mean. When you have land bases, and all the seagoing services have big radar arrays, we'll call it, and they have access to a lot of these communications and frequencies and stuff like this. Okay, and satellites. And when they say it's for weather stuff, but there's other stuff going on in there. Anyway, you would go into some of these. I had access because I was an engineer, and sometimes things would break and I have to go fix things or whatever. And a couple of times I got to print out, in fact, I still have one. It's framed. I have an image of Ground Zero a week after 9/11, okay? And it's a satellite image, and it's super high resolution. And when people see it, they go, wow, how did you get that aerial photograph? Are you flying above it? That seems kind of high, but how did you get that? I said, that's a satellite photo. Now, this thing's 10 years old, and I have it printed out on a big printer. You know what I'm talking about, the big, huge printers that they print out satellite images and stuff?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. This was 10 years ago, Joe, and this thing's super high resolution. Can you imagine what they have now?
You remember that movie Minority Report?
Mm-hmm.
And then what was the other one that had, what was it? Not Gene Hackman. Oh, gosh. The one with the satellite. I think Will Smith was in it. And they could look and see.
Enemy of the State.
Enemy of the State. Yeah, Enemy of the State.
Yeah, dude, let me tell you something. You want to talk about predictive programming?
Woof. I mean, they're there. We'll just put it that way. Hell, they're probably past there. They're probably way past there. But I'm just saying that you're right. There should be no expectation that they're not doing this, because they are. They're doing it. And the thing is why? Well, why is there such a need for all of this satellite imagery? One of the things that I found very interesting was how municipalities seem to be loving this, because now all of a sudden they don't have to go and snoop into your backyard anymore to see if you put in that shed or put on that addition or put that in-ground pool in your yard, because all they got to do is look at Google Earth and say, oh, well, looky what we have here. Mr. Popeye, he hasn't been paying the right amount of taxes for the last 2 years, so we're going to go and slam him because we have all that information now. Oh, boy, I mean, these municipalities are loving this kind of stuff. So can you imagine if all of a sudden they get down to the level of like a three-wheeler or a four-wheeler or a motorcycle that you haven't been paying your taxes on, you naughty boy? Now they got you. I mean, this is huge.
I'm going to work on a magnetic pulse weapon.
You do it.
See what happens then when their drones come hitting the ground.
By cracky, what the hell is that Hildebrand working on now?
I don't know. We can't see. He's got a cloak of invisibility over his property. It just looks like an empty lot. He's overpaying on his taxes. And what the hell hit our drone when we flew over? It's all about money. That's all it is. It's all about how much money can they glean from the slaves in the country.
That's right.
You think you're a free citizen.
Well, how dare you not file for a permit, you slave? How dare you think you have freedom in the land of the free?
Well, what gives them the right to tell me I need permission to do anything on my property?
That's my mother. So, you know what my mother did? She had a bunch of work done over like a 2.5-year period, and she went and got a permit done once because she had to have the roof done. So she did the roof first, and she had to, because, that's the most visible one. And then she kept the permit for that, and every time she had something else done, she would just take the old permit and put it up in the window. And she would put it up high up in the one bay window so that it was far away from the street. And on the street, it looked like the permit was good. But when you got up close, you could see the date was old on it. And then she put up a fence around the house, so then you had to cross the fence line to come in. And if you did that, then she would be like, she caught the inspector on the property a few times, threw him off.
My next door neighbor was putting up a fence. He wasn't putting up a new fence. He was replacing the old fence.
Right.
So he made the mistake of tearing down the old fence first. Oh. And then as he started to put the new fence up, they came over and said, you don't have a permit for that. They said if you were replacing an old fence, that would be different, but you're putting up a brand new fence. He says, I am replacing an old fence. I just tore it down. They argued with him. I came out of the house. I said, wait a minute here. I said, he had a fence there. He's just replacing it. Well, we didn't see it. You know, this is the problem that we have. These meatheads work for us.
Right.
Work for them. And I'm tired of somebody who walks around all day with his thumb up his ass telling me what in the hell to do.
That's putting it lightly, too. Because he does a lot more than, you know.
Think about this. But they're parasites.
They are parasites.
These government agencies like this where they go around checking to see if you have your permit. They're parasitic in nature. So without them going around and busting your balls and charging you money for stuff and saying you need this permit or permission or this or that, the other thing, they wouldn't have money to feed their kids. So they have to act like that.
Yep.
Until we get rid of this stuff, because by nature, things like that, traffic tickets and everything, it's all predatory. It's all about making money. It's all it's about.
Yeah, sure. Taxation by citation.
And we get the dumbest damn people now to become cops.
Yeah, because they're good followers. They don't think for themselves.
Yeah.
Do what you're told. Be that good soldier.
I've talked about this. I talked about the articles where the one guy sued because he had like 110 or 120 IQ or something, and they told him you're too smart to be a cop. And he was pissed, and he still lost because the court was like, well, it wasn't just against you, it was against everybody. So, and he said, yeah, but they're discriminating against smart people. And basically, the reason the police said that they did that, this one police station, the reason they said that they did, or department, they said that they found that people with too high IQs they had a turnover rate, too high of a turnover rate of smart people, basically.
Well, why do you think they take young people into the military and they don't take people like me back in?
Because Ken, us would never willingly go.
Because you're a crotchety old curmudgeon, you.
Well, because, dude, honestly, they don't want guys like us because we would go, that's bullshit. And we're not going over there. Whereas if when you're 19 years old, you're like, give me a rifle and point me in a direction. Rah!
Yeah, life experience is a bitch. So, hey, Ken, what do we got to look forward to next show?
2 hours of silence. No, we have a whole bunch of good stuff. We're, matter of fact, talking about the courts.
Yeah.
We got Judge Napolitano is going to be on. And
all right.
And we're going to talk about RFIDing students and breathalyzers and no graduations. And, hey, the court's okayed repeatedly tasering of a pregnant woman. And the UN wants to tax the web. So we've got other good stuff around here. So
here's how I want to leave, Joe. F the UN, okay? Here's both my middle fingers and bow. They can eat it, okay? Right here. You know what I'm doing. I'm doing the V.
Yeah, I know.
They can suck it, okay? UN.
Suck it long, suck it hard.
Yeah, suck it long and suck it hard, Kofi Annan. And the rest of you gun-grabbing pieces of shit over at the UN.
That's Ban Ki-moon to you.
Well, I only have one thing.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. Ban Ki-moon. Kofi Annan's retired now.
That's right. Now he's retired. Now he's just leading Syria.
Here's for the UN.
Here's your first pee test. Next one goes in your mouth. No, you won't get high.
I knew the soundboard had to come out at some point in time.
Yes, it did.
Fantastic. Folks, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Don't forget, the next edition of the Freedom Link is on Tuesday from 10 p.m. to 12 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Old Popeye and I are going to stick around with Ken and totally hijack his show. He thinks that's what we're talking about tonight, but we really have a whole new agenda in store for him, so...
21.
You son of a bitch.
Oh, boy, it's Soundboard Wars. Yes, sir. It's going to be one heck of a show. But thank you for coming out.
Bitch.
You don't understand.
So don't you wait, folks. Another 8 minutes or so, and we'll be back with you. Only Ken's at the helm. We'll see you Tuesday.